All right. So today I said we're going to talk about like rapid change, and I kind of tweaked it a little bit. I got to get a different camera. Should kind of click in now. All right. Well, this is my Cobra Kai t-shirt. It's not Orwell's 1984, even though I think they're pretty close. I think I said I was going to talk about rapid change, and I'm going to talk about that because I've just been, like a few people, I was at back-to-back conferences recently. You know, I was at Hypno Thoughts at the end of July, and then week later or so, I was at the NGH conference in beautiful Marlborough, Massachusetts. And then I got home for like 2 days, then went and worked on a film set for 3 days. So it's been kind of a hectic few weeks in a good way. And so when I was thinking about, because when you go to these conferences, there's a lot of things on rapid change, quick change, how to do these kind of things. What can we do, to help people change quickly, which is good. But many times, at least what I've noticed, is rapid change doesn't stick. Right? It'll give you a jump start for a few days, maybe a few weeks, maybe a little bit. And then, and again, it depends what you would say is rapid and how long is the measurement for what you would consider a success. But if you're really trying to change, you have to look at it a little bit deeper, right? And too many times, I think hypnotists, NLPers, a lot of the personal coaches they focus primarily on the superficial bullshit, right? They'll get a little change, get their money, and then move on. That's the whole basis of, I'll show you how to get big ticket clients on the internet, right? And of course, I always say, if it was that easy, why would you constantly go train other people? You would just keep your big ticket clients for yourself. But so when it looks at this, and it was interesting at the two conferences, I got in a couple of arguments at each conference with some people, different groups, same argument, exact same argument, which I thought was interesting, right? Which was, the argument was, and you've heard me say it a lot, is why are there so many fat hypnotists and personal coaches? I do not understand this. And at one conference, they really lit into me, say I was body shaming and doing this and that. I'm like, well, I'm just saying it's not healthy. This is cut to the bottom line, right? It's not healthy. Because I know in my own life, if I put on that 10 pounds I used to carry, my knees hurt more and my lower back. When I drop the weight and I keep it off my knees, I don't have to take as much, anti-inflammatory that the wonderful Veterans Administration gives me, or some of the other stuff, right? Because it's weight dependent, And the last ortho he said, yeah, there's for every 10 pounds you put on, you take so many months off the shelf life of your knees. At least that's what he thinks, right? And I'm like, this is interesting. So anyway, it was a cool argument in the two different camps with a couple of different groups. And like I said, the one was calling me body shaming, and all I was saying is, this is just, I always wanted to do the Jack Nicholson. Well, then you can't handle the truth because the evidence is just standing there with a donut, right? And so it was kind of interesting, and because again, if we have the keys to the kingdom, if you will, with hypnosis and NLP and some of these personal change techniques, why aren't you doing them in your own life? That's always my default question, And again, I saw it, at the one conference, especially in Vegas. The whole time I was there, like 7 days total? I think it was. And I saw exactly 5 people from the conference at the health club at the hotel. It's a really nice little health club at that. I think Michelle went to it. There's a really nice little gym, right, at there. And I would go down in the morning and never saw anybody there. But you saw a lot of people at the alligator bar drinking, and now the big thing is vaping, all these people getting stoned at the alligator bar. And I'm like, this is kind of interesting. But, I'm not judgmental, except when I'm being judgmental. So anyway, so when it gets to this, like, what about the rapid change? What about the rapid change, right? You're going to help people make rapid change. Well, it all, when I sent out that e-zine, the title was, what, why are you you? Who are you, right? And it boils down to, my bird's screaming in the back. It boils down to one primary little thing. Basically, you are, your habits, right? You are your habits. Your habits are you. That's, and I think that sometimes is the missing ingredient when you're working on rapid change. You could work on the, like, weight loss of that, but what are the habits that got you to put on the weight? And do you need to change your habits to get the habits that will keep the weight off? Right? You're your habits. Forget her name, but she's a psychologist at the University of Southern California, and she estimates at least 45% of your life are run by habits. It's the things you do not consciously think about that you do, right? And so that's, I was thinking about that at these conferences because I was watching what are people doing that they're doing unconsciously. What are people doing unconsciously without thinking about it? We all do that, and whether it's first thing in the morning, getting your coffee and loading it up on extra sugar and cream, and then putting a couple of pastries, getting a couple of pastries and walking around like that, right? If that's a habit and you're not even you're barely consciously aware that you're doing it, right? That becomes who you are. And then those things like, like weight loss, putting on weight, developing the bad habits, so if your habits control you, if you have bad habits, right? If it's bad habits, you're going to get negative affect from it, right? Whether it's, drinking too much or eating too much, or, now I can add vaping too much, saw a lot of that, especially at the one conference, by the way. And, because Las Vegas they also brag they have the world's largest dispensaries, right? And the casinos are starting to put in their own, like vape, customized vape pens and things like that, right? So it's kind of interesting. So what are your habits that drive you to do this, right? And I think part of this goes into, someone sent me a thing about, we have permissible indulgences, right? When you get these permissible indulgences, it might start as a small thing, like I'll occasionally have, a sweet or a dessert or something like that. But many times those permissible indulgences become a habit. It becomes the way, way you eat, right? And again, I saw it more in Vegas just because it was easier to watch it in Vegas because we all had lunch together at this big buffet that was delicious. And, how many people went to the dessert place first and got their cheesecake and they had some great desserts, by the way, as Michelle can come on and tell you that they did have. It's Vegas, it's the buffet. It's a classic Vegas buffet, right? Or even the habits that they have, loading up like with the pastas and the white rice on their plate, right? And I'm like, well, this is interesting. You're also sitting all day basically at a conference, right? So it's like, so high carb food, not much physical activity, right? In a closed environment with no sunlight, And I did see a few of the people. It's like one guy, we were standing there talking, and he finally says, I got to go outside and sit by the pool. I got to get some sunlight. I've been in here for like 6 straight hours, right? I said, good idea. So we went out and we're sitting out. It's rather warm. Las Vegas is rather warm. But we went out, we were out there by the pool in the sunlight to get some vitamin D, right? And of course, the guy that said it is, I would say he's younger, but I'm not good at age, but he's in great shape. He takes care of his physical body. And him and I kind of started this conversation I'm having now. And he's like, I don't understand why people don't take better care of themselves, right? And I know part of that is, here's a story, reminds me of the story. I was teaching a class, right? Basic NLP class, and everyone in the class was a massage therapist because I was teaching it at a massage school. And the person that ran this massage school, it took my class and thought it was great. So she had all these, she had a massage school. So she wanted me to teach her, the students. And so I did an intro thing and we were talking about rapport skills and doing this and that. And what I noticed is these are massage therapists, their body, working with the body, being physical is their thing. Is when in the NLP world, when we talk about sensory acuity, they were all absolutely horrible at being physically aware. Like when you do in the NLP thing, we do a touch exercise and stuff. They were not physically aware, which was kind of interesting, I thought. And then one person pointed it out that had been a massage therapist for a while. And she said, well, it's because you're focused on someone else. You can't be focused on your own body when you're doing a massage, right? Because if you do it enough, you're doing 3 or 4 massages a day, your hands are probably getting tired, you're on your feet. It could be, you're focused externally on helping this person with, like that. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting, right? And so I began to track, who is good at this kind of stuff. But that makes sense to me. So when I think about this thing that I'm on now about like, why are there so many, hypnotists and personal coaches with some bad habits, it's because their focus is outside. They're not looking at themselves, right? And usually the only time, and I've gotten a lot of people calling me to help, like cut back on their drinking or lose weight or something. And it's usually after a crisis that makes them look at that, right? They get in a little scrape with the law due to drinking, maybe a DUI, and suddenly I'm getting a call. I didn't think whatever it was, it's not important, but I've had a lot of those phone calls. And I get people that like, the last 4 or 5 weight loss, they were all kind of the same because it usually runs that way. They're all like, I saw pictures of myself and I couldn't believe that was me. What happened? And I'm like, well, you quit exercising. You've been locked down for 2 years. You're eating, you haven't changed your eating routine from when you were working out pretty regular, right? It's kind of a recipe to put on a few pounds. If you were used to burn 3,000 calories a day, now you're burning 1,500 calories a day, but you're still eating 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day. It's going to go somewhere. It's going to go somewhere, right? And things like that. So what are the bad habits, So if we're going to look at change and making change better, we got to really not just look at the superficial thing, like helping to make the first level change, but you got to drop down to what I would call, I don't know, I'm just making this up, second level change, where you look at what habits led to that person doing whatever that behavior or getting that affect in their life. What's the underlying, not just actions or behaviors, but what's the things that become second nature? What's the thing that becomes the habits? And again, when you look at, Harvard Business School talked about, binge drinking is up 21%. And for adults, and that's usually over the age of 24, because usually binge drinking is a teenage, early adult phenomenon, high school, colleges, first few years if you go in the military, that's kind of the binge drinking phenomenon. But now they notice that it's up 21%, and they estimate that that's underreported, right? So you figure it's up. Well, why is it up? Well, maybe you had these habits. Okay, if you look at the thing, it's binge drinking. Well, what are the habits? Well, if you were used to having a cocktail or two after work, right? So let's say you're Billy and you live up there in the Beltway and you had to drive in. So you're looking at a 45-minute to an hour commute, right? So you get off, you get off work, 4 or 5 o'clock. Well, you got that hour commute, and that's a little bit of decompression time, right? And then you get home and you have a beer or two or a cocktail or two, no big deal. Not, it's like fine. I'm not anti anything. And well, now, let's say you're working from home. So you don't have that hour commute. You don't have that decompression moment. As much as you can bitch about traffic, it's cloistered you from the outside world for a few minutes, right? And you're, and unless you're drinking and driving, and if that's the case, that's a whole different issue we'll have to talk about, right? Then you come down here to Florida where guys buy ice beer by the can, at the gas station, which always cracks me up. But so anyway, you got that decompression time. So you get home at like 6, then you have your drink or two, and then you might have dinner and that. Well, now you're working from home, so you log off the computer at 4:30, 5, whatever it is. There's no decompression time, and you pop the top, right? Or you pour your glass of wine, which leads to another one. And you're also thinking, I don't have to get up extra early in the morning for the hour commute to the office, so I don't have to be on the road at 7. I can roll out of bed at, if you're starting at 8, I can roll out of bed at 7:30, run a comb through my hair, put on a clean shirt, and then just sit there in my pajama bottoms and start work, right? So you don't have that time. So then you're thinking, well, it won't hurt to have one more drink, right? Nobody's, it's the same phenomenon, Bruce and I have seen in Florida where people retire and they start drinking more because they can. There's no buffer in the morning. So, but it could be the same with like bad eating habits. You used to snack a little bit but you got off work, you had let's say your commute drive, and then you got home and you had a snack, and then you had your dinner, and then, but now that decompression moment alone is gone. So that little snack becomes, because now you're snacking at 5, not 6. So the snack builds, and calories count, and so it's kind of interesting when you look at this. So all these little habits that you don't consciously think really matters begins to matter, right? And then you flip into the other side, not just I'll pick on food, not just what you eat, right? Right? It's what do I always say? It's not what you eat, it's what's eating you. So now you have these extra stressors from the pandemic, from all this stuff going on in the world. And if your self-regulating mechanism was either like drinking or eating, well, you're going to up it because you're just trying to self-soothe, right? So now you're doing that. But wait, there's more, right? So it's not just what you eat, it's what's eating you, but also what about exercise or movement, right? We were told for about 18 months it wasn't safe to go outside. I mean, we need to shut down the health clubs, the gyms. Heaven forbid, we want people going somewhere where they actually do something good for their health, right? So they shut that down. So it's easy to get out of a habit, especially if you weren't a chronic exerciser, you kind of made yourself go, right? Well, you got out of the habit, right? I have worked with several people lately that have said, they don't understand it because they like when they exercise and they like when they finish exercise. They don't understand why they don't exercise. And I said, well, it's because it's not a habit. If it was a habit, you would exercise. I was doing a little Taibo in my room on the film set, right? Before I would go, because I knew I was going to be sitting on my ass on a 12-hour shoot and maybe had 45 minutes of actual filming, right? So you're sitting around all day waiting for you're up and you go do your thing, right? And guess what? They had all the junk shit out there. When you're on a film set, they put out a lot of snacks and stuff, right? And they had some healthy snacks, you know, some like beef jerky and fruit, apples and bananas and things like that. And again, I'm just sitting there watching, like, let's see who's picking what, you know? And it was pretty easy to see who was eating what, who was going through the bags of chips. You know, there's one person even said, damn, I think I went through like 8 bags, you know, the little bags. I think I went through 8 or 10 of these little bags of chips, right? Well, you're bored, right? And of course, I'm sitting there going, you think this is bad because they're younger people. Can you imagine being on a film set when you didn't have cell phones to entertain your ass for 8 or, you know, you had to actually like read a book, you know, when you were, you know, and there's a couple other more mature actors there going, oh yeah, that was the first rule. You brought 2 books to a set so you could sit off by yourself and not, you know. So anyway, so things like exercise, are you moving? You know, you got out of the habit and now you got to re-access and maybe reset that habit or do that. And one of the quickest changes is a linguistic change. And it's pretty simple. Right? In fact, it's one of those that's so simple that most of us don't do it, which is like if you get up in the morning and you say, you know, I got to work out today. I got to work out today. Right? Or yeah, I got to eat healthy today. Whatever it is, right? What does this word do to your brain? Right? To me, this, for most of us, it means it's force. There's a force. You know, I got to do this outside. It doesn't matter if it's an external force or an internal. There has to be pressure for you to do it. I've got to do this today. Right? And the linguistic switch, one of them is if you switch it to, you know, I get to work out today. Right? I get to eat healthy today. Right? You know, so what, you know, so it's like, you know, this one linguistic switch, you know, this for most people, this is like a good thing, you know, it's a positive. I get to do this, you know. Right? So it turns it from more of a negative into a positive. I get to work out, I get to do this, I get to do that. Right? And I'm not saying that'll make long-term change, but it'll start the process of, because it's your internal dialogue that drives everything. Right? It's your internal dialogue, right? And again, going back to our classic NLP, you know, you have your internal state, your external behavior, you know, and your internal representations, which includes your self-dialogue, right? And all of those represent each, you know, they all link together, you know. It's kind of like if you make yourself, if you get yourself to the health club, you're much more likely to exercise. I always hear people say that. Once they get there, they know they're going to exercise because they're at the, you know, they're at Gold's Gym or Planet Fitness or wherever it happens to be, right? You're going to exercise because you're there. The other reason is it's the external people around you. That's the behavior that they're doing, right? And again, it's the people you surround yourself with, which will really set your behaviors, right? No, you may not rise to the level of your dreams. You will always fall to the level of your peers. So if you want a better life, get better peers. You want to be in shape, hang around with in-shape people. You want to be thin, hang around with thin people, right? You want to be successful, hang around with successful people, right? Whatever it happens to be. So, you know, so you're going to the, like, you know, and again, going back to the conferences, I was seeing the people that were like snacking on the fruit and doing this, they were kind of hanging together, you know. This year they didn't, but usually at the one conference, the National Guild, they'd have a table out in the morning, you know, with like pastries and stuff on one side and then coffee. And on the other side, they put out fresh fruit. because it was it's in Massachusetts, and it was all locally apples and plums, things that were grown locally. At least that's what the manager of the resort said. It's basically local stuff. And you'd see the people that were grabbing all the fruits and the healthy stuff would be talking. And then the people, and I swear to God, I heard this conversation several times, where people are putting the 3 or 4 donuts on their plate, loading up the sugar in their coffee, going, it's just so hard to lose weight. No, it's not. Put down the crap. Step away from the plate. Move your fat ass. It's pretty much that simple. I didn't do that at the conference. I was tempted, but it's just fascinating, right? So again, we get a small linguistic shift, change your internal dialogue from you got to do certain things to you get to, right? And one person was telling me how effective this was. And the person that pointed it out to me said, they didn't exercise regularly before the lockdowns. And they noticed since things have opened up, they started working out more at the health club. And I said, why is that? And they go, because I think, hey, I get to go to the gym. Big Brother's not telling me I can't go to the gym. Okay. So it's like, oh, okay. And that was it got him motivated, right? And again, so the other thing I think besides, we wanted to look at habits, we want to look at these internal reps with people. And I think we want to help people find an external group that will support that behavior, or whatever the behavior is that they want, that the habits are normal. So if it's like, exercise or eating healthy, if you're hanging around with people that are exercising or eating healthy, it's easier to do that. I always, I'll always default to like the 12th, like the recovery world. There's a reason why people that recover from addictions, long-term addictions, alcohol and drugs, they usually hang around with people that are in recovery, at least at some level, right? It's like, and there were several people, especially the conference in Vegas, which I enjoyed, that I personally know don't drink or use substances for a lot of the same reasons I don't. And a couple of them were talking to me. It's like they were gone from a lot of the social activities early, right? It was one person been sober a couple of years, said, yeah, because if you you hear this a lot in the AA world, if you hang around a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. If I hang around that bar, the alligator bar long enough, I might have a drink. Except for Billy. Billy won't get a haircut, but yeah, so it's like, that was kind of interesting, right? So again, we need to work at like, what are the habits? Can we look at the bad habits, but then at the same time, what are the good habits you could develop? So it's not just removing a bad habit. And I'll close with this. Is always my complaint when people go, I can help someone overcome an addiction and they'll never have to like go through like a 12-step program or anything like that. Okay, the thought is they can remove the bad habit. But are they going to develop good habits in its place? What are they going to do? If every day for 20 years you got off work at the factory and you stopped for a beer, okay, maybe now you don't want a beer, but what are you going to do? What do you have any? And all those guys used to hang around with at the at the bar after work, and maybe go on the weekends and watch sports events. If that's not in your agenda, if that's not in your world, what are you going to do? Right? So we not only have to remove the bad habits, we have to figure out ways to get them the good habits, right? And that will build on that. So I would start with the linguistic shift from the things you need to do, saying you got to do this, to you get to do this. And I forget who was pointing that out, right? And so, this is why our old programs or our old habits, good or bad, are going to be what rule your life. So you got to look at and again, if they're true habits, you're not consciously aware of a lot of them. You just make those choices. You just make those choices because you are your habits, right? That's who you are, right? And so, a lot of people have reached out. So I think what I'm going to offer next, what I want to push next, is I'm trying to think of how to word it. I don't like the word challenge, but it's going to be a mini control the food. Don't let your food control you. Control your food habits. Don't let your food habits control you, right? And so that's going to be a lot of fun. And part of it, the first part is going to be talking about, the 8 mental rules for long-term weight control. Right? I'm going to, because the physical rules are pretty easy. You need a caloric deficit to lose weight. It's that Billy's the scientist here, but there's, you got to be in a caloric deficit if you want to lose weight, right? So that, so you need to move more, eat less, do some other things, eat healthier, but at the same time, you need to feed your muscles. You need to do some other things. So we'll be doing the physical side, but we'll also be doing what are the mental laws? Where is our mental aspect? What habits can you develop that can become long-term habits for the kind of life that you want? So that's what I'm, because again, walking around the conferences just made me go, I think people need this. I don't think most people won't sign up because, they're too busy saying, I'm special, it won't work for me. There's another, and it's the sliding scale. I will shut up with, it's the sliding scale of what's the norm. What's the norm, right? I was at one of the conferences. I was sitting in the room, hiding from people because I was peopled out, and flipping through the TV, and Jaws was on, the original Jaws, 1976, I think it was 77, whatever year, mid to late 70s, and I'm watching it. And they have the big beach scene, right? When they're getting, you know what I mean. If you've never seen it, everyone should watch it. One of the best, it's rated as one of the top 5 motion pictures of all time, right? And the scene where the one guy does the speech about the USS Indianapolis, man, best acting I've seen. But anyway, when they did the beach scene, I'm sitting there going, God damn, everybody on that beach is skinny. And it was just normal group, that was filmed it was filmed on location. It wasn't like, Hollywood where they got all the young, beautiful stars and starlets, right? It was like everyone's thin, right? And I was thinking that, and then the next day there was a stage hypnotist there, and he was showing a clip from his college, one of his recent college shows. And I'm looking at it, and the first thing this sounds cold, the first thing I thought is, these kids are big, and then in honor of Billy there, I'm thinking, I don't think any of these people would pass a basic PT test, right? Yeah, so we better get that clone army up and running too soon. But so I'm like, and that's just things have changed, that what we consider the norm has changed. And I guess I am judging it, but it's just kind of interesting, right? It's just kind of interesting. And, so that's kind of where what I've been doing. I could, Billy, by the way, I could still crank off 40 push-ups in one round. Mainly because I got to do that on set soon. So anyway, that's it. Let me stop the recording. So look for info on the other stuff. And I'm not sure what we'll talk about next week, but it'll be something fun because I know I'm not going anywhere for the next few weeks. Thank you.